If you clicked into this video and thought, oh my god, a list of books that Aoife was super excited to read, I bet she's read all of them. Welcome to your first day on this channel. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife and today I am wrapping up my 2024 books that would self-destruct, and I am also introducing you to the 2025 candidates. This list has been going around on the internet for so long. It was created by Becca from Becca and the Books, and the idea is that you will put aside a specific number of books that in the next 12 months you have to read them or you have to get rid of them. And there's no two ways about it. You have to kick them out of the house. This list went in exactly the way that I was expecting it to, in that I put all of these books on this list and I had such good intentions and then forgot that the list existed for most of the year. I've read some of them. There are a couple of books on here that I have read, but the majority of them, let's talk about it, shall we? One of the books that I actually did read across the year was The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Agawa. I read this in June as part of Buzzwordathon run by Kayla from Books and Lala. This was to fulfill the repeated words prompt because it had the word the twice in the title. And this book was okay for me. I think it was because it was so mathematical heavy, which I should have expected considering it's about a mathematics professor who loses his memory every 80 minutes. But there's a housekeeper who comes to his house every day. She brings her 10-year-old son with her and she keeps an eye on him, she cooks for him, she cleans him, and he strikes up this absolutely beautiful friendship with her 10-year-old son, who he names Root because his hair reminds the professor of the square root symbol. It was such a wonderful book and it was really wonderfully told, but I think because it was so heavily mathematical, it just didn't sink in for me as well as it would have with other people. So am I glad that I read it? Yes. But would I go back and read it again? Probably not. But because it was on this list, it is ticked off. I also DNF'd a couple of books on this list, and that will still count. So I DNF'd Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I really tried with this one. I read it back in June as well. And I really did try with this one. I wanted to fulfill this one with the repeated words, but it just didn't work out for me. It's really heavily video game based, which I think is something that's going to work out for a lot of people, but I'm not a very big gamer. The most gaming that I do is Stardew Valley on my phone or The Sims 2 on my laptop. Other than that, I'm just not interested in that kind of a world. And I didn't really believe in the romantic relationship between the two characters. I can barely even remember what their names are. That is not a good sign. I donated it straight away to my local library because I'm pretty sure someone out there is going to love this book so much. It's just not going to be me. I also DNF'd All the Fields by Olivia Dade, and I think I'm going to DNF the entire series as well. It just didn't work for me, and I think that the reason that this didn't work out for me is because it is so heavily Game of Thrones based. And I said that in the setup video last year. It is set in the world of Game of Thrones, and that's not a show that I watch. I'm not a big fantasy girly, so it's not the kind of thing that I would gravitate towards. But because it was Olivia Dade, and because I really enjoyed, spoiler alert, I thought I would give the rest of the series a go. Now, I have read other books by Olivia Dade and I have enjoyed them so much. So I know it's not a writing style thing, it's just the situation in the book. I have also already gotten rid of Ayoade and Ayoade by Richard Ayoade, and the reason for this is that we had two copies. I had a copy of it here in my house in Berlin, and my brother had a copy of it back at our parents' house in Ireland. So we thought, why do we have two copies of this one book when we can just read it and swap it between one another? So I got rid of the copy that I have here. I put it into my local library again. I'm not sure if Richard Ayoade has a huge fan base here in Berlin, but if he does, somebody in the area can read about him. So let's talk about that other pile of books. And the first one, and you will notice something about this, is Sex and Vanity by Kevin Kwan. And yes, that is a bookmark in this book. This is in progress. And I think that because it is in progress, it's in that kind of purgatory where I haven't read it, but I also haven't not read it. So I think that this one has to stay purely because of the reason that it is in progress. It's not very far in. I'm having a good time with it. I don't think it's one that I'm going to get rid of anyway. I don't think that I can get rid of it under the rules of this list because it hasn't been read yet. But it is in progress. Also on the list was Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. I picked this up as part of a book club that my friend Shara was going to be running, but her channel has gone into hibernation and she hasn't actually started the book club on any other platform. I've never gone and picked this up by myself though. I've never actively looked through the shelves and thought, oh, Sorrow and Bliss, I'm definitely in the mood for that right now. Oh, Sorrow and Bliss, I really need to read this, I've heard such good things about it. It's never been one that I've gravitated towards. In that 12-month period that it had to be gravitated towards, So I think it's just going to have to go. I don't actually remember when it was that I bought By Any Other Name by Lauren Kate. I cannot even tell you what it is about. I think it's set in New York and it's about a publishing firm or an author and a publicist, but I've never ever reached for it. It's not a book that I've heard anything about. I don't know if I want to be the one to start the conversation. So this has been lying on my shelf, completely ignored for the entire 12 months. If I haven't reached for it in those 12 months, it's very likely I'm not going to reach for it ever. Sadly, I'm going to have to skim down my Marion Keyes collection with The Brightest Star in the Sky getting off my TBR. I don't know if I'm going to send this to my parents' house in Ireland because I think if my mother gets into reading, she'll probably really enjoy Marion Keyes' book as a whole. But I tried this as part of a try a chapter tag for Irish authors on my TBR. It wasn't March just gone, it was March of 2023. That is almost 2 years ago by this stage, and I just don't think that I am going to reach for this one. It is quite big. I think it's about 500 to 600 pages, which is usual for Marion Keyes books, but I've never thought, oh, I have the time that I can donate to a Marion Keyes book right now. This is the one that I'm going to go for. I think it's because that initial starting chapter didn't grab me so much that I've just never gone for it at all. I did at least try Michael McIntyre's A Funny Life. I gave it a go back, I think in June or July. I listened to a little bit of the audiobook which he narrates by himself, but I never got caught up with the story. I do really enjoy Michael McIntyre's comedy. I really enjoy the game shows that he presents on Beauty TV, but I didn't really get gripped into this one as I think I was hoping that I would. I know that my dad and my brother are going to really enjoy this because they also really enjoy Michael McIntyre as a comedian, but I think if I wanted to engage with him again, I would just watch one of his Netflix specials, or I would watch The Big Wheel on ITV. I don't think it's going to be by reading his book. I read The Vanishing Half about 3 or so years ago, so I was actually really excited about The Mothers by Britt Bennett, but I've never looked at it. I was expecting there to be a prompt in the Amazing Readathon this year of a book with a bunch of colours on the cover. And we didn't get that as a prompt, we got that as a side quest. So when we didn't get that, it never really came to my mind that I could read it for any other prompt, which is a bit weird considering I was on the general fiction team and I could have just slotted in anywhere. But I've just never reached for it, and I don't know if Britt Bennett has any other books that are coming out in the next couple of years, so I've never really had that urgency of, oh, I need to finish her back catalogue before anything else can come out and that I can read it now. So I think this is going to have to go to the library. In 2024, I did try a book by this author. It just wasn't this one. I had got the setup by Lizzie Dent on this TBR, but I had actually tried to read a totally different book by her. I just could not get into the audiobook. The narrator had such a grating accent that I didn't get involved at all. And I know that this book is about astrology, and that is something that I am not super invested in, but interested in. I have an interest in watching like TikToks about astrology and saying, oh, I'm a Cancer woman, that will definitely apply to me. My brother is a Virgo, that's definitely going to apply to him. My mother's a Scorpio. I just never really went for this. And I think particularly when I didn't have such a good time with her most recent book, it just put me back a little bit further. This one is a little bit difficult, and you would think that the circumstances of it would push me to read it. But I also had Beautiful World, Where Are You on this TBR. I had a feeling that Sally Rooney was coming out with something new in 2024, but I just wanted to read this one anyway because it didn't belong to me, it belonged to a friend of mine. We haven't seen each other since she actually gave me this book. We've kind of lost touch a little bit. I think she is still living in Berlin, but I haven't been in touch with her so that I can say, oh, I'm finished with Beautiful World, Where Are You? Can I give you this back? So now I don't know what to do with it. Obviously, it has to come off of my TBR because it is no longer going to be a book that I want to read. But how am I going to get it back to her? Those are the books that were supposed to be read in 2024. Let us all hope and pray for better in 2025. This one has got a bit of a theme. It is based on the books that intimidate me in some way. Either they're super big, they've been on my TBR for a really long time, I've read something from the author before and was a bit 50-50 about it, and this is like their redemption round. So let's see how the TBR goes. First up is, of course, Sex and Vanity by Kevin Kwan. As I said, I'm a little bit into this book, and I am a little bit intimidated by it because of how much I enjoy the Crazy Rich Asians series and because of how big that book was. But this is much, much smaller in comparison. It's about 350 to 400 pages. That's much more doable. It's still got the same wit, it's still got the same love. It's also got the footnotes that you would have expected from the Crazy Rich Asians series. And also, now that Lies and Weddings has come out and they are somewhat connected in the same world, I feel like I really need to read this one first before I can get on to Lies and Weddings. So let's try and get it done. I am also going to try and concentrate on Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. I've had a really good time with Sarah Adams before. She writes a different type of romance to what it is that I would usually seek out. None of her books have very steamy sex scenes in them, but they have fantastic angst, they have really great communication between the characters, and they have all of the tension that you would want, even if they don't have the smut. I really enjoyed Sarah Adams' books before, but I felt like I kind of trudged along with When in Rome a little bit. And this is the second book in that series, and it is following Annie, who is the sister of the main character in the first book. I'm interested to see where it's going to go. I have a couple of other Sarah Adams books on my TBR, and I just want to see if she is an author that's going to work for me, and if I haven't put money into an author and into a series that just isn't going to gel. I swallowed The Appeal by Janice Hallett whole on the day that I read it. I put myself on my chair at about 6 or 7 o'clock after work, and I did not get up except to pee or except to get food until about 1 o'clock in the morning when I was finished. That energy didn't really travel into The Mysterious Case of the Alternate Angels, which I actually DNF'd about 60 or so % into the book. But I'm hoping that the Twyford Code is going to be back up where I want it to be. This is about a children's author who has gone missing, and her only legacy left is the Twyford Code. And everyone is trying to solve it, everyone is trying to figure out what it is that it means so that they can discover where it was that this author went missing to. I'm interested in this, I am intrigued by it. My dad has read this and loved it, and he gave it over to me as a copy to read. So when it's finished, I know that it has a home to go back to. It's just, can I get it read before I need to send it there? I am a rugby girly. I love rugby. I enjoy watching the Six Nations. I enjoy watching the Autumn Internationals, the World Cup, even though Ireland doesn't have the best track record at the World Cup. So when I heard that there was a romance series set in Ireland focused around a rugby team, I went out, I got it. But the size of it is what is absolutely putting the fear of God into me. Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh is a genuine door stopper, as in I have put it in front of my door to hold it open when I needed to go in and out really quickly. It's terrifying how big this book is to me. And I know that it's one that I'm probably going to enjoy because I understand the terms and I understand the references that they're going to be making. And because it is set in Ireland, I'm going to understand a lot of the cultural references here as well. It's genuinely just how big it is. Also, I just flicked through because I wanted to see how big the book was. It's 800 pages. That's a story for another day. It's got my name in it. Why didn't anybody tell me that it has my name in it? That puts it straight up to the top of the TBR. I borrowed Lease on Love by Fallon Ballard from a friend of mine, and I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't the best book that I'd ever read, but it wasn't the worst I'd ever read either. But it did kind of put me a little bit unease for reading any of her other books. I know that there is a Christmas book that has come out this year that I really want to try, but I also would really need to read just my type. I got this as a kind of a blind book in my local bookshop, and I just never really gravitate towards it after I had unwrapped it. I was like, oh, that's cool, and then just put it on my shelf and forgot that it ever existed. I really hope that this was just debut novel jitters with Fallon Ballard and that this is going to be way up at the top. Because it seems to be set around a bookshop or a publisher's or a magazine, I'm really interested in that because I love that kind of meta book stuff. So let's see how I get on with it. I have had Lessons in Chemistry on my TBR for ages. I think it's been on there for about 3 years by this stage. And that is when it has come to the time that it's really shit or get off the pot here. I've meant to pick it up a couple of times. I've even had library holds for the audiobook that have come in and that I have renewed and renewed and renewed, and then I can't renew it any further because somebody is waiting for it, or my actual maximum hold has come in. So I need to actually get it read because it seems like I'm just on the cusp of reading it. I'm always like one step away from actually diving into this book. So it feels like I just need that little push to get me over the line, to get me off the diving board and to just dive in. I only got In Memoriam by Alice Wynne during the summer, so you might be thinking it's a little bit premature to be putting this on a self-destruct TBR, but when I bought it, I had it with the intentions of reading it for the Amazing Readathon, as I was on the general fiction, which included literary, contemporary fiction, and historical fiction. I had intentions to read it during that month, But when it never fit into any of the TBRs, and then I saw a couple of reviews that said it's really heartbreaking, as in this will genuinely dehydrate you from crying, it put me off a little bit. So I think I just need to put my big girl shoes on and actually just pick it up. I don't believe that darker romances and I have ever gotten acquainted, but for some reason, I went out and picked up a copy of Twisted Love by Anna Huang. I got this about 2 or so years ago, and I just never went and picked it up since. I think because I am that little bit concerned and I am that little bit held back because it seems to be a darker romance than what it is I usually read. This is, however, set in a fun fair and it's set at a theme park, so I feel like that will kind of buoy me over a little bit, even if the romance is going to be something completely different. But if I am going to put this on my shelves, I have to read it. 2 years ago, when I turned 30, I gave myself the gift of a personal shopper experience at Dubray, a bookshop chain back in Ireland. And some of the books were a bit hit and miss, but all of them have been read except for one, and that is Fingersmith by Sarah Water. This has obviously been on my shelf for over 2.5 years by this stage, and it's the only one that is left that hasn't even been touched. During the Amazing Readathon, a couple of people on the team read this and fell instantly in love with it, and I was so intrigued by it, but then still didn't pick it up. So I'm hoping that that's going to buoy me in a little bit more, and that I'm going to remember, hey, so many people that you knew read this and loved it, so you are probably going to feel the same way. This might be the only win from that 6-book stack, by the way, because they had kind of varying degrees of success, and I'm hopeful that this one is going to buck the trend. A book that has been on my shelf for even longer is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. This has been with me since before I moved to Berlin, and I moved to Berlin 3 years ago. That is way too long for this book to just be lingering around on my shelf when I haven't made any instances to try and pick it up. This is one that just intimidates me because it doesn't have a whole lot of punctuation in it. And I don't like that kind of stream of consciousness writing. I need punctuation, I need quotation marks, I need grammar. I'm gonna give it a try. I'm really gonna go into it and I'm really gonna give it my best shot, but this is one that just might not work. Finally, another big chunky boy, Mile High by Liz Tomford. I have heard some good things about this. I have heard a lot that it's not necessarily an Aoife type book, but I was intrigued by it, and I like when an author writes about something that they know so much about. Liz Tomford is herself a flight attendant, and she has also written a character in here who is a flight attendant. It's also a why choose or poly romance, and I'm not so well versed in that. This is going to be the first one of those that I'm ever going to read, and I just want to see if it's going to be for me. So, even though this is quite big, I think this is the second biggest book on this list, I'm going to give it a try. There we have it. The success, that was 2024, and the hope, that is 2025 for my self-destruct TBR. Did you do a self-destruct TBR, or did you have a book that you put into your mind that if you didn't read it in the last year, it had to go? If you'd love to leave me a comment, but you can't think of anything you'd like to say, then just leave me a making a list emoji. Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.